Love, light, and blessings. Shamanic White Priestess here. I got a really beautiful gift. I think I'm going to separate that from this video. So I'm going to make this video, and then I'm going to make a quick video because I do want to thank the person who got me the beautiful money tree that I pretty much took pictures with. I might include in the thumbnail, but I want to show you guys what it actually looks like. So, but I wanted to keep this video, I'm not going to say too short. I have a lot of notes. This is going to be a lot of research went into this video, and things, and I'm gonna try to keep it calm. Try to keep it calm. Can't guarantee that it will stay calm, but I'm gonna try to keep it calm. You could see this as maybe a part 2 of the original video that I made, Are You an Ally for Marginalized People? So I love everybody's feedback, comments, response, discussions that have opened up. I love that that Black people, Indigenous people, people of color are speaking out. I love that allies are speaking out, so non-people of color are speaking out and things like that. I'm very excited about that. But I also got a lot of how can I help? I don't know what to do. I don't know what to help, and things like that. Kellyanne Maddox provides 2 great recent videos on that topic, and she has resources and things like that, which I think it's a great video. So I'm going to try to include it in the link so you guys can look up the resources that she researched as well, if you guys want to do that. And she provides a good video, and from the perspective of a white person who's an ally, which she's been for many, many years. Okay. So I'm going to make sure to link that video. So this video is a dedication to Juneteenth. For those of you that don't know, may not know what Juneteenth is. So in America, they celebrate the 4th of July, the Declaration of Independence, and things like that. But if we're keeping it 100% honest and real, the Declaration of Independence was not written for Black people, for Indigenous people, for people of color. It was written for pretty much all men are created equal, and they were actually talking about white men. So even though in America we celebrate July 4th as the Day of Independence, it was really the independence of white people from England. Juneteenth, so June 19th, is the celebration of the freedom, the emancipation of African slaves, the ending and the abolishment of slavery in the United States. Okay, so that's what the celebration's about. So technically speaking, for Black people, this is our 4th of July. This is our day when we celebrate, we reflect on the fact that slavery ended and people were, well, it wasn't perfect, let's be real, but you know, slavery technically ended. Okay. Okay, so that's what that is about. So I thought, what better day than to write, well, I wrote notes, but to speak about how you can be an ally from a Black Indigenous person of color, which is me, a Black Indigenous person of color, my perspective, how I, just speaking as one person, because I don't represent my whole community, of course, feel that you can be an ally. So get some tea, some coffee. This might be a long video, just letting you know, and things like that. Okay, so the title of this video is going to be Being an Ally, How Can You Truly Help? Or something along those lines. So step 1, listen to Black, Indigenous, and people of color's voices. No one understands our experience better than the people going through it, right? So listen, like truly listen, not just hear somebody, but listen to the message. Even if it makes you uncomfortable, listen to the information. And the second step, which goes hand in hand, learn the facts. Do your research, okay? So like I said, Juneteenth is the celebration of the end of slavery in the United States, which happened on June 19th, 1865. And pretty much a general came to Texas and said slavery is over, with his troops and things like that. So when I say listen, when I say learn the facts, let's start with, yes, there were Black people here prior to slavery. No one's taking that away. But I'm going to start this video about slavery, okay? there were approximately 12 million Africans removed from the continent of Africa for the sole purpose of slave labor. Okay? 40% of the African population moved to Africa were brought to the shores of the Caribbean. So when a lot of people think about slavery, we usually just think about in the United States. We have to understand the gravity and the scale at which slavery really happened. 12 million people were distributed to various parts of the world of African descent. So they were in Puerto Rico, Santo Domingo, Cuba, Jamaica, you know, all these places, Brazil, so on and so forth. So 40% of that population, Haiti, or in that time, Saint Domingue. So, which is now it's Haiti and Santo Domingo. So 40% of that population, 40% of the 12 million Africans that were taken from the continent of Africa were brought to the Caribbean. 5% of that population, 600,000 slaves, were brought to the United States. Okay? The other 55% were distributed to other parts of the world. So we have to look at the grand scale of slavery. This is why you have black people in India and other parts of the world. Slavery affected things as the world, which makes sense to me why not only is the United States marching on the behalf of Black Lives Matters, the world is doing it now, because this is not just a United States fight. This is a worldwide problem on a national scale. Black people are oppressed in many and various parts of the world outside the United States. So when people say, well, if you don't like America, go somewhere else, where are you supposed to go? When you don't have citizenship in places like Africa. African Americans don't have citizenship in Africa like that. A lot of times is the place where you were birthed is the only place you know. You have the right to liberty and dignity. It is not a political issue. It is a human rights issue. So understand that 12 million people, men, women, and children, religious leaders, were removed from their homeland as merchandise. One of the first things they did was cut the hair of females so they didn't have the identifying braids that they had. Okay? And things of that nature. They dehumanized them. They took away their identity. They a lot of times took away their history. There's a lot of descendants from this time period that don't even know what tribes they're from. Don't even know where their ancestors came from, what religious practices their ancestors had. They're like a lost tribe. How can you know where you're going if you don't know where you came from? So we have to understand the history. And that's what I mean by listening and learning the facts. Black Americans and Black people from the diaspora itself have a unique experience in various parts of the world. Slavery began from 1501 and ended in America in 1865. In certain parts of the Caribbean, it ended at later times, okay? Even after slavery was abolished, they created a system where non-white people, Black people, indigenous people that were forced to off their lands to live in reservations, which are really concentration camps at the time. The most polluted, uninhabitable lands, garbage lands was given to them. Okay? They invented laws, Jim Crow laws, from 1877 to the 1950s that literally were laws against anyone that was not white. Okay? Segregation ended in 1965 with the Voting Acts. We founded this country in 1776. And even in 1965, Black people were being beaten to suppress their vote. Because if you vote, that gives you power. They made laws where they had people guess the number of jelly beans. They made rules that you had to own land to vote, and so many other things. Women, white women, were given the right to vote before a person of color was. In 1964, they passed a Civil Rights Act to desegregate the schools. They had military cars, and the military had to be activated because they were not allowing these black children to go to school. Okay, these were similar laws passed for Mexican students as well. So there was a lot of stuff going on. Okay, even Mexican children's schools, so even immigrants that came from other countries had laws that desegregated their schools prior to the Brown versus the Board of Education. Africans that were born here, they were brought here because they did not choose to migrate here. They were forced to migrate here. Like indigenous people were here first, and they were forced off their own land. So these people of color's experiences are unique. Forced off your home, forced into an unknown home that you don't even want to be in. There's the difference between that and being an immigrant that chooses to come to America for a better life. That's a whole completely different experience. So what does that have to do with today, you're probably asking? This is why I said listen and learn the facts. Today, as of right now, 45.8% of young black children under the age of 6 within the United States of America, the second richest country in the world, live in poverty. That is half the population almost. Think about that. Versus 14.5% of white children in the same age group. And remember, 76.5% of the United States population is predominantly white. So that means that most live above the poverty. Black people make up only 12 to 13%. Almost, that's staggering. That's staggering. When we talk about what's going on in the black community today as well, not only is there poverty, so our children aren't placed in the best schools. Schools aren't funded as well as they are with their more economic predominant neighborhoods. Research what redlining is. Research how some of us, even me, I have a hard time, even though I make a good living, moving to certain neighborhoods, okay? I've been to interviews to look at houses and places, and on the phone they're available, and once I get there, there's excuses about why this is a good neighborhood. And it's happened to me on more than one occasion. It happened to me even when I was married. They were all happy with him, and once he said, let me see if my wife likes the house, the story changed. The narrative was changed. Because for those of you that don't know, I was married to somebody who was white. Well, who is white, sorry. They didn't change, you know. So let's talk about housing inequalities, job inequalities. They've done studies where people judge you by your name, and just by your name, if it sounds too ethnic, they would take somebody else who applies for the same job that sounds more American and give them the job interview. That's a real thing. That's even before they talk to you. There's studies done on this. There's a system that was created since the founding of this country to hold non-white people down. Let's talk about mass incarceration. There's 5 times more black men in jail. Again, they only make up 12 to 13% of the population in jail versus their white male counterparts. And a lot of times there are non-violent crimes. What does that have to do with what I'm talking about? When you are someone who does not have the same social and economic opportunities, you're not going to be able to afford a lawyer. Most of the time you have a legal defender that gets paid whether you go to trial or you don't. Most of the time we have to plead out because we lack the resources to get proper representation. 20%, okay? There's a 20% higher sentencing for the same crimes as a white male counterpart. So black men serve 20% more of a longer prison sentence than their white male counterparts. There are documentaries that I've watched that were made from people outside the United States that literally talks about police getting incentives for certain people they arrest. They have admitted that in certain neighborhoods, in brown and black people neighborhoods, they're more likely to pull their guns because they see our neighborhoods as dangerous. Our neighborhoods have been proven to be over policed more than the white counterparts or people of economic advantage. They police our neighborhoods more. I don't even live technically in the ghetto. I live in a working class neighborhood, in a middle class neighborhood, but it's predominantly black and brown. And we get policed a lot, okay? Like a lot. And this is a nice neighborhood, okay? So think about that. They are allowed to surveillance people in the cars and tell our young black men to lift up their shirts. Why do you have your hands in your pocket? They've done it to me before, taking walks at night. Why don't do it? What are you doing? And following me slowly in their car. So they do racial profile people. That's a thing. It is a system that was created to hold our people down. That is what literally this country was founded on. We must understand our history, because if you don't know your history, if you erase your history, how can you move past this, and how can you move forward as a nation, as a human people, as humanity? Next thing we're going to talk about, Latinos or Latinx. They are twice, so 2% likely, twice as likely. So there's double Latino population versus their white male counterparts. And like I said, there's a 20% more longer. So they do 20% more time, African Americans, versus their white counterparts. There were 264 black people killed in 2019 by the police. Again, they only make up 12 to 13%. So of course there's going to be more white people because they make up almost 80% of the country. This is why I'm talking to you guys in percentages, because they try to change the narrative by quoting numbers. This is why I said learn all the facts. In 2016, there was a study published, there was a study done, documentary based, also created a documentary for it. 1 to 2 African Americans are shot and killed by the police a year. 1 to 2 people. There's a greater chance for an African American man to get shot by the police than having a car accident or even having heart problems. So basically, this is one of the highest death rates they have in their community. Think about that for a second. This third step, with all these stats that I'm quoting, if you want to be an ally, not only do you have to listen to the black, indigenous, and people of color talking about discrimination and learning the facts in a non-biased way, recognize your privilege. I'm not saying that your life is better than mine. I'm not saying that you don't have your own problems. When I talk about privilege, I talk about when there's an officer in front of you and there's an officer in front of me, I am more likely to get shot at by them. I am more likely to get locked up. I am more likely to face some type of discrimination versus a white person. That's what we mean by privilege. Some people see the cops as safety. I am afraid of cops. Every time a cop drives up and I see young black children playing, my heart races and my hand shakes. When my daughter's school had, oh, you should eat lunch with the cops, none of the parents really even signed up for that. It was very rare, because our children are afraid of cops. They're fearful of them. They don't see them as protectors. We have to understand, I'm not saying I hate all cops. I'm not saying this and that. There are people in the community, their husbands are cops, and that's fine. And I'm sure they're good people. But we cannot ignore the fact of where and what are the origins of police. police, the origins of police were actually the slave catchers. If you look at the symbology of the medal they would wear, it is the same symbology that today's police officers wear, the star with the little circle. We have to understand that policing was founded in racism to catch runaway slaves. Okay? We have to understand where things come from in order to know where we are going. Recognize your privilege. Recognize that we have a disadvantage when it comes to poverty that affects our schooling, the education of our children, how funds are distributed in our communities. Most of our funds are distributed to policing. And that's what most people mean by defund the police. Let's invest in community-based services to address the problem of Black, Indigenous, and brown people of color versus just locking us up. Let's build rehab centers. A lot of people that are in jail is because they cannot afford to go to Betty Ford and the nice rehabs. They lock up drug addicts all the time instead of providing them help to get clean. A lot of people are jailed for non-violent crimes because they had marijuana. How many teenagers have experimented with marijuana in the suburbs? Yet if we do it, we go to jail for years. In some states, you have 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out. And you could do heavy sentences. New York was known for stop and frisk. We have to understand that you have to understand there is privilege. There is a problem with mass incarceration. There is a problem with systematic racism. A society, a country that was built on the backs of free labor, where it was built on the blood of indigenous people, on the blood of African descent people. We have to understand that. We have to understand that there were Asian people that were forced to build railroads. So this country was founded on the blood of Black and brown people. We have to understand that. You cannot move forward if we do not look back and really listen and learn about our history. Black men are 2.5% more likely to be killed by police. Even things as a regular traffic stop, busted tail light, speeding, failing to signal, than their white male counterparts. That's almost 3%. And if we look at that, there's, again, a large white, that's what you guys are called, the majority of this country. Almost 80% of this country are white Americans. So that is mind-boggling. 1 in 1,000 Black males will be shot at by police. That's a lot. Now I'm going to talk about Black women, because Black Lives Matter is also about Black women too. Black women are 1.5% more likely to be killed by police than white women. Now I'm going to bring it to Native Americans, American Indians, right? They're 1.7% more likely than white males to get shot at by the police. The people that this country was founded by, the first inhabitants that were in this country, almost twice as likely to get shot at by police. The females are, so Native American women, not only do they have a high number of sexual assault and sexual trafficking, 96% of them report this, they are shot by the police at 2.1% versus white women. Twice. So for every 1 white woman shot, there's 2 Native American women shot. And they make up 2% of the population. We are literally genociding brown people in this country. When you kill a mother, when you kill a female, when you kill a man, when you kill a husband, a father, a parent, you are breaking down the Black indigenous families. You are breaking down the brown people's families and their family structures. You are forcing these children to face these things that could affect them growing up. Think about that. When it comes to the Latino or Latinx community, the males counterparts are 1.4% more likely to be killed at the hand of police versus their white males. In this study, it was very close, so there wasn't a significant disadvantage with white Latinas versus white women. That's why I didn't include that in there. They're actually pretty close, so that gives me kind of hope there. It's important that you learn about the 13th Amendment and its effect on black people in prison. If there are 5 times more black men in jail versus their white counterpart, the 13th Amendment literally gives the right of the prison system to get free labor. Free labor is slavery. Prisoners are forced many times to work for free. That's slave labor. When you redline a community, when you set up the society to keep certain people impoverished, that is still segregation. Because in a lot of parts of the poorest parts of America, there's a high brown, black population. So even though you can't legally say you're segregating, our schools are still segregated. Our hospitals are still segregated. A public hospital is so differently funded than a private hospital. There's even disadvantages in our healthcare. Healthcare that was founded, especially women's gynecological healthcare, so gynecology was literally the father of modern gynecology, literally experimented on black and indigenous women, enslaved people with no anesthesia, experimented on them as if they were nothing. That is how a lot of the procedures we have now. And to this day, black women die more than white women in labor. To this day, there's a difference between the way we're taken care of and our reproductive health versus the reproductive health of our white counterparts. We have to learn these things. We cannot be afraid to talk about these things. The 4th step, study and educate yourself on prison reform and how the current system is working against black, indigenous, and people of color. Study about the stats, how this affects family, how this affects the economy, like in our communities, how our communities are over policed, yet they have the most crime, so something is wrong there. If you want to be an ally, research so that you could understand, okay, this is what we don't like, and figure out ways to change it and work together to change it. Step 5, let's study the history of education before segregation and now, how we're socially and economically segregated in our schools. Study about where the funding's going. How much funding is this neighborhood getting versus the other neighborhood? Because it is proven that in the inner city, schools are less funded. So that creates an unequal disadvantage in education. So it creates a disadvantage. In some areas of our country, only 50% of brown people graduate, black and brown people graduate from high school in some parts of this country. And some don't even know how to read because they're just getting passed. Step 6, study the history of the police, like I mentioned before, and its origins, and then you can understand why there's bias there. Okay, why there is bias there. Inform yourself with studies, non-biased documentaries. Watch news that's not affiliated with a candidate. A lot of news media outlets are either Republican or Democratic owned. So try to watch things like TYT, for instance, or Democracy Now, or Now This. or pro-black channels that talk about black issues, from a black person's perspective. Try to watch PBS NewsHour is literally funded by public donations. They're not affiliated with parties. Try to get non-biased news, because when you have a candidate or a particular party paying for the news, they're going to only show things to their advantage. Okay? That's just what's going to happen. Because there is a such thing as fake news. So we have to make sure that we're getting our sources, researching where we're getting our sources. I'm very woke in that sense. I research everything. Step 7. As much as I appreciate the videos and the marching, the only way we're going to make change in this country is by using and exercising our voting rights. Okay? So I'm going to talk about more stats here. When you're going to vote, yes, vote on your issues and everything else, but research your candidate's record. Does this person have any type of records of racism? What is this person stands on the people of color's issues? For example, when they were fighting for the APL and they didn't want that company to drill on native lands, that was important to know who we're voting into office, because who actually approves from that? Where is your candidate getting their funding from? Who's paying for their funding? Because when somebody pays for your funding and you have dirty political money, you're going to vote for those lobbyists that are paying your salary, that are paying for your campaigning, that are making you rich. So research your candidate. Who's funding their campaign? What does that person really stand for? And start bringing issues of brown, indigenous, and people of colors forward when you're going to vote for somebody. When you're having town hall meetings, start bringing our issues, which is, again, unfairness in education, over policing, mass incarceration, racial profiling. Start bringing those issues forward. Make that a make or break issue when you're voting for your candidate. Because remember, okay, there's power in numbers. According to a recent study, as 2019, there were 31% of registered voters were Democrat, 30% were Republican, and 36% are independent. So there's only a 1% difference between Democrat and Republican. This is why it's important to understand the gravity of voter suppression. When in inner cities and in certain neighborhoods there are less places to vote, why ID laws that were created to vote, and in some states, if you don't vote for a certain amount of years, they revoke your right to vote. This affects us with mass incarceration, because when people are in prison for non-violent crimes, you may lose in some states your right to vote. And if we're the most being arrested, that means less of us are able to vote. That are all different things. So no longer are we counting jellies or guessing how many jelly beans in a jar or answering silly questionnaires or getting literacy tests or doing that. Now the new Jim Crow is taking away our right to vote by making laws that work against us so that we don't vote. And this is why if you see voter suppression, report it. I went through that recently when I was trying to vote through my primaries. I am a registered Democrat, and they were saying that I was a non-party affiliate or something, and I'm not allowed to vote in my state. In some states, they don't allow you to vote unless you have either a Democrat or a Republican, registered as one or the other. And I said, well, I've been a registered Democrat since the age of 18, so doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to vote Democrat all the time. Technically speaking, I'm an independent, but because I know what state I'm in. So this is why this is important, because they literally wouldn't let me vote. They made up a story according to our computer, but wouldn't let me see the computer, threatened to call the constable on me and the police. Because I know what's going on right now, I left. Upset, but I left. And I told them, and I reported them to a local politician in my community and all that kind of stuff. But this happens all the time. They don't want us to vote. They don't want us to vote. They want to suppress the vote. So support us. When there are bills that are, when you're going to vote in your local election and they start passing, when they want to pass bills like they are going to alleviate voter suppression, vote yes. Look into the ways that where our votes are being suppressed and do something about it. Write to your politicians. You know, go with someone that's a non-white person to the voting polls. They don't have a vehicle, drive them there. Hey neighbor, you're gonna vote? You know what I mean? You can volunteer. Make sure that people of color are registering to vote. And if you see their vote being suppressed, you have a phone, record it, report it. The more they see that people won't allow these things, the less likely it will happen. So stand with us to help ensure that we are able to exercise our voting rights. And like I said, there's more white people than any other majority. You guys are the majority. We're the minorities. So when a certain administration won, it was because a large white Christian population voted them into office. According to a poll, 89% of white people are registered Republicans versus 2% black people. So I was watching in a video the other day, oh, but what about the conservative, whatever, they're saying like there's no such thing as racism and all this stuff. Okay, that's 2% versus the 90-something% that's saying there's a problem. Just because you have the same color doesn't mean you're going to agree about everything. I tend to focus on what the majority of people are saying. Some people say those things because they want political gain. Some people feel like, well, I kind of feel like there is a problem, but I don't want to say it because if we don't say it, it doesn't happen. That small percentage might feel like, well, I never had that experience because everybody's experience is unique. That's valid. Or that small percentage of people that say racism doesn't exist could also be that they know it does, but if you keep quiet, just be satisfied with what you got. I've been told that too. Stop speaking about this. At least it's better than what it was before. No, I'm not satisfied with that. I don't want it to be at least better. I want it to be equal. So understand that as well. Okay? I'm not saying their opinions are not valid, but I'm going by stats and facts, not opinions. 13% of Latino and Latinx, okay, are literally registered Republicans. So the majority of Republicans are white Americans. So this is why, because you guys are the majority in the population itself, even the Democratic side knows we need the white vote. So what they're going to do, they're going to base their campaign a lot of the times on white issues. Why? Because 75 to 80% of Democrats, of the black populations are Democrat. So that's why when you saw that video that he was like, well, the other politician, well, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. And he had to apologize for that because they called him out on that, is because the majority of black people are Democrats. So they're not going to campaign for us. So if you're an ally, look at your candidate's stance on mass incarceration, stop and frisk, laws about jails, fundings, social economic programs. Look at those things as well. Is this person going to advocate for all Americans or just one population of Americans? Are you going to go against the system, or are you going to continue to partake and take advantage of a system that was created for your benefit and not mine? Let's be real and honest about it is what it is. 71% of Latinos are registered Democrats. So Democrats have the majority of minority votes. The votes that usually swing elections are the independent black people, the independent Latinos, are a very small percentage. But the majority of the votes they're trying to get is that independent white American vote that can make or break an election. And so when you are looking at a candidate, make sure that this candidate is not anti-LGBTQ plus, LGBTQIA plus, because our current administration has tried to make laws and has tried to repeal Obamacare, you know, which also puts down a marginalized group of people. This current administration has put children in cages. This current administration has not wanted to publicly say that what happened to George Floyd was racist, doesn't want to admit that racism exists. So we have to look at that. Words have power. If you deny a problem, you will never solve the problem. This current administration didn't want to admit that COVID-19 was a problem. So when you're voting on the register, when you're voting, make sure you're voting for the people that are voiceless, for the people's that rights are being taken away, that are not being allowed to vote. So when you vote, think about how this is going to affect humanity as a whole. What is your candidate going to do for people like me? What is your candidate going to do to preserve indigenous rights, indigenous lands? Okay? That's a way. Your vote matters. Bring our issues to the front lines as well. Okay? There are people that are saying they're going to set out this election because of how ignored the black community has been. I cannot blame them for that. Bring our issues to the forefront. Bring our issues to the forefront. So support our communities with your vote. Write to your politicians. Demand that they listen and change this system that was built against us and for our own oppression. Step 8. Oh yeah, we did that. Yep. Stand against voter suppression. My battery was dying. Okay, step 9, hold your politicians accountable. Step 10, stop saying that you are too sensitive to watch the things, police killings of unarmed black people. I'm too sensitive. I'm an empath. I can't. Because I cannot remove my skin color. I cannot stop being a non-white person. A black person can stop being a black person. A Native American person can stop being a Native American person. We don't have the privilege of just turning off the TV and forgetting about it, because this is the reality that most black, indigenous, and people of color face on a daily basis. Racism is alive and well in America. It is something that affects us, most of us, on a daily basis. So for someone to say, I don't want to watch that, and doesn't keep up with the police killings and the stuff that's going on in the government and the bill that we're trying to pass for police reform, and the anti-lynching bill they've been trying to pass forever, doesn't get passed. When you don't watch the news and election time comes, you don't know there's bills that are trying to be passed in our names and for our community, so then you don't vote for them. So not watching the news because you're sensitive is a privilege. Unless you have like mental health issues and things like that. I'm not talking about. I'm talking about I'm talking about the majority of people who say that really aren't too sensitive. They just feel like if I don't face it, if I don't look at it, then it's not a problem. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of black Americans have post-traumatic stress disorder when it comes to police. I'm one of them. A lot of people don't understand that when people were kneeling down, like Colin Kaepernick, when they were doing the national anthem, it was not to disrespect soldiers. It was to kneel down to make the country understand that that same flag that you're standing up for and singing so loudly for does not cover every American the same way. We don't all have the same advantage. We don't all have the same privilege. We don't all have the same rights. Justice is not equal for all of us. And justice truly is not blind in America. Stop saying that you don't see color, because if you don't see color, you don't see me. If you don't see color, you don't see me. Donate to programs that help people that are disadvantaged. Like COVID and the unemployment rate affected a lot of black people and people of color. And yes, it did affect white America too, but it affected a lot of service workers, which is the majority look like us. So things like Feed America, donating to your local soup kitchen, putting food back in the tables of people that don't have that. Donating to sickle cell anemia research. Sickle cell anemia affects African American people. Okay? Donate to the ACLU. Donate to the NAACP. Donate to organizations and grassroots that represent people that were falsely imprisoned, so they can have pro bono lawyers that could take them out of these jails. Step 13, support us with your money. Support Black-owned businesses whenever you can. Black authors, Black deck creators, Black tarot readers. Go outside your comfort zone. Step 14, treat our children like they're children. When you see one of our children misbehave in a public place, I remember I was doing a protest recently. It's another reason why I made this video. Okay, because I'll be protesting these weekends. I was protesting earlier today. And these young kids were marching with us. I was all happy, like, yeah, non-brown people. And these, I think they were like preteens. They had gotten water bottles because they were giving out water bottles in the march. And they got so irate because these kids poured the water on the floor. And they went like to throw it across. You know how you dunk to see if it goes in? And the bottle fell right next to the garbage can, and they walked away. Like they weren't doing anything else. They possibly didn't see that it fell out. These 3 young white kids got up and were like, I can't believe we effing marched for you. And I was just waiting for the N-word to come out. And I was like, really? Like, you marched for us so because they missed the garbage can? And I was like, yo, relax. And I told the kids, I'll help you clean it up. Because with all the noise they made, the cops walked over. The very thing we're trying to fight against. Like, it's not that serious. Like, would you have been that mad if the children had a different skin color? Like, you know, it like, really examine yourself, because sometimes without knowing, there is a little bit of bias and stereotypes and anger. And you may not even be aware of it, right? Because it's human, right? It's something that's ingrained in the foundation of our country. Really, truly examine yourself. Are you truly a non-racist person? Are you truly anti-racist? That's where your shadow work comes in. Breaking down the stereotypes, right? Why are you so angry? Not you, like you and YouTube. I'm saying to those kids. Why were they so angry? Why were they so angry to the point where they looked like they were going to hit these kids? Why did that make you so angry? I've seen kids do that of all races before. They were children. They were like 11 or 12 years old. Recognize that our children are also children. Why are you threatened by our children? Why are people calling the police on children for selling water bottles, bags of chips in the train station, like arresting kids at schools, tackling them at schools? Why do we have police officers in schools and they're beating up brown kids? Since when did schools become a place to have police like that? When, if you look at the numbers, most shooters of schools are predominantly white kids. Not our kids. We're not doing that. It's the majority of white children are shooting up schools and doing mass shootings. So then why are our schools so policed? Why do our children have to get afraid if they do something wrong that a normal kid does? And they're going to go to jail, and now they have police records, and now you can't get certain jobs. They try to do that to my son that's autistic, that he's 18 now, God bless him. Bringing him home in handcuffs for no reason. And I fought that because I know my rights. Again, systems that are set up to discriminate against our children. Why do you have a policeman in a school? When again, predominantly the people that shoot up schools are white. And then when they do it, it's amazing to me how somebody shoots up a school and you don't get shot once and somehow they get to arrest them easily, but someone who fails to signal or has a broken tail light or I thought they had a gun, they just get shot up for no reason. 16 times, 10 times, 8 times, 7 times. We have to really look at this. Number 15, examine your own motives and intentions, which I was talking about. Are you truly an anti-racist, or is it something that everybody else is doing it? I don't want to be known as a racist. Do your own inner work. Be honest with yourself. Do you have biases? Do you have certain prejudices? Be honest about it, because it's something that you can work on, right? Step 16, do your research, keep the conversation going, but be careful of unintentionally drowning out the voices of the people that are being affected by systematic racism. So be an ally, but don't drown us out. Don't take us out of the conversation. Don't remove us from the table, right? And now I want to do a short list. 17. Don't incite violence in the protest. They showed in the news that they wanted to show this agenda that all these black and brown people were doing all these riots, when they was trying to see there was a lot of white people doing it too. So you're not an ally if you're going to a protest and breaking up windows in stores when you know for a fact that the system is set up against black and brown people. So who do you think is going to get shot when you guys are acting up like that? Who do you think is going to go to prison? So you're not really helping. Don't incite violence. Don't incite violence. You're not being an ally when you do that. You're not helping anything. I had to remove comments because, and there was like certain white people like, yes, it's not time to be an ally. It's time to be an accomplice. We need to break down and burn everything down. I was like, you could burn things down by yourself. I'm not going to jail because our people get killed for less things than that. Like, I don't have the privilege to go burn something down. Let's stop that. You're taking away from the message of the protest and the cause when you do that kind of stuff. You're taking the voices of the very people that are oppressed and you're making it about yourself. That's not being an ally. Don't make it about yourself. All right, so now I want to say just a short list. Just some people that I want to mention. George Floyd, killed by police by the police officer putting his knee on his neck for almost 9 minutes. Tamir Rice, 12 years old, shot by police because he was playing with a BB gun with his sister in a park. And someone called the police and said, I think the gun is fake, but there's a kid waving a gun around in the park. It took about 20 seconds from when the police arrived and they shot up this child. Manhandled his sister and pushed her on the floor because she wanted to see if her brother was okay. They killed him on the spot, 12 years old. All the mothers out there, imagine your 12-year-old, God forbid, your child getting shot for playing with a BB gun in a park when there was nobody else there. And tell me that wasn't a racist, that wasn't a lynching. 12. Trayvon Martin was 17 years old and he got shot by Zimmerman, who is suing the family right now, by the way. He wasn't even a cop. He was a neighborhood watchman that was harassing this kid. This kid, they got into a fight and he thinks, well, I'm losing the fight, so I'm gonna shoot somebody up. Fighting dirty. Okay. Michael Brown, 18 years old, received 7 bullets and his body was exposed for almost 5 hours, and the cops had the audacity to leave his body there while his mother's watching. Her baby just dead on the floor. About an hour or two later, they finally covered him up with a blanket. They didn't even get a hearse or ambulance. They took him in the back of an SUV. They told his mother while she watched her dead child on the floor, you need to calm down. You need to calm down. And they tried to make a lie. There's a documentary, it's called Stranger Fruit. It's available on Hulu. Watch it. When the police released the video of him robbing a store and that's the reason why that happened, lie. He was exchanging marijuana for cigarillos. He's a kid. It's marijuana. Oh, he's a big time drug dealer, whatever. It's marijuana. The people in the day shift didn't know he bartered, so he got upset. You know, he was calm, but then he got kind of loud with the dude that was in the thing because he was being mean to him or whatever, and they got into a confrontation. Nothing happened. He didn't put a gun on anybody. People argue. He's a human. But that had nothing to do with why he got shot down, because the cop that was on duty that night had no idea about that. He never robbed anything. He had an argument with a store clerk. That's it. And again, that had nothing to do with the guy patrolling. He was literally yelling at him because he was walking with his friend and they were walking in the middle of the street. And Michael Brown made the mistake of answering him. No, the friend made the mistake of answering him back, which the cop think he could just grab somebody by the neck. He's trying to struggle away from him, shoots him, boom, boom. When he turns around to walk away, what would you do if somebody's shooting at you? I'm gonna run. I'm gonna leave. Boom, boom, boom. Puts his hands up. Boom. That's where that phrase, hands up, don't shoot, came at the time of Michael Brown. They have spent years demonizing this kid because that's what they do. And that's why I said you need to watch non-biased media. Whenever we are killed by police officers, they always criminalize us. It's always our fault. Eric Garner died of a chokehold in Staten Island for selling a Lucy, which is a loose cigarette. A loose cigarette. Walking in the middle of the street, playing with a BB gun. Philando Castile, a regular traffic stop. This murder was filmed on Facebook Live. Fiance arrested. Shot, his arm shot off because he was telling them, he was trying to get the ID card when they give you a ticket that you're supposed to, and he made sure to tell the officers, I do have a licensed gun in the car. License means legal arm. And when he went to reach for his license, he got shot. None of these officers, none of these people that killed any of these people have ever gone to jail, not one day of their life. Sandra Bland died in police custody under mysterious conditions over a traffic stop. The officer was irate because she said she didn't want to get out the car, she didn't have to, or turn off her cigarette. And she got beat. Treated less than human. Breonna Taylor was a EMT, 26 years old. They were looking for drugs, which come to find out the person they were looking for wasn't even there. Didn't knock. Her boyfriend thought somebody was intruding. They had regular clothes on. What would you do if you had a legal firearm and people that you don't know come and break into your house and break the door down? You're going to take your gun and you're going to shoot. Because isn't that what everybody always says? This is our amendment right. Black people have the right to carry arms too. And they wanted to put him in jail for 20-something years. They shot his girlfriend in his face. Bloodbath. In a t-shirt and panties because she was sleeping. Could you imagine somebody coming into your home at night in plain clothes, breaking your door down, and you're trying to defend your home and they shoot you to death? When we in this country always applauding first respondents, Breonna Taylor was a first respondent. Recently, 2 weeks ago, Justin Howell was in a protest. And that's why I said, if you're an ally, stop inciting violence. Another ally or another person in the protest decides to throw things at officers. Guess who gets shot? Justin Howell, who didn't do anything. And then when he gets shot and he gets shot in the head and he's bleeding out, and some of the protesters see that and they carry him over their shoulder to walk to the officers to get medical attention, the cops continue to not only shoot at Justin Howell, but the people that are trying to bring him to the attention of the police. And I want another person, I'm going to say their name. Sean Monterrosa, Latino, was shot with his fist up, hands up, kneeling down because there was some kind of loitering going on that he was not a part of. And he wanted to show the cops like, hey, I'm not part of that. Got shot because there was something silver in his pocket, which they found out was a hammer in his pocket. And he was shot and killed instantly. Justin Howell was recovering in the hospital with a fractured skull and brain damage. Another stat I want to bring to you. In California, 46% of the population is Latino or Latinx. 39% of them have been killed by police in confrontations. So while African Americans are the whole United States, as I want to make this message also to non-black people, so other people of color. Our fight for Black Lives Matters is also your fight for your lives, because when they make police reform to break away the systematic racial profiling that's done, is not only going to benefit Black people, it's going to benefit Latinos, it's going to benefit Native Americans, it's going to benefit all non-white people. Because one of the biggest things they try to do in this country is that they try to give you misinformation. They don't want minorities to unite because we are powerful in numbers. So they want to divide and conquer. And unity is the only way that we will ever be able to break these walls of oppression and racism and a system that was not built for us. And lastly, even if you're not a Black, Indigenous person of color, this still affects you too. Are you going to choose to watch it and do something about it, or are you just going to be a bystander that watches and says, it doesn't affect me? Are you going to stand up for injustice, or are you going to sit back? How do you want history to write you? What do you want to be known as? In step 19, learn the true definition of what racism really is. There is no such thing as Black supremacy. There is no such thing as reverse racism. And I'm going to give you the true definition of racism. Systematic racism is a form of racism expressed in practice of social, political institutions. Remember, we are the minority. So when they do political campaigns, they're mostly catering to non-Black, Indigenous, and people of color. This is why we had more white people, males, be president. Majority. It can lead to such issues as discrimination in criminal justice, where it's more likely that we get killed by police, mass incarcerated, do longer prison sentences, right? Employment. I just talked about how people will literally not give you a job on a resume based on if your name sounds too ethnic. They've done studies about this. This is why certain people have given their children names that are like ethnically neutral. Okay? Discriminating housing, redlining, allowing us only to live in certain neighborhoods and making it harder for us to live in more predominant neighborhoods. Healthcare. I just talked about how gynecology was founded on enslaved women. I was talking about how hospitals in inner cities are underfunded. Political power. I just talked about that. Who are the politicians? They don't look like us. One president out of how many? And education. That is racism. The people in power creating a system to oppress the other people who are in the minority. So when people say, oh, could this person? No. A person cannot be racist if they don't have power. They could be prejudiced. They could discriminate, yes. But they cannot be systematically racist because they don't have the political power as the same level as their white counterparts. And this is the whole message here of this video. So this is how you, if you want to be an ally, be an ally. Watch this video, listen to the message, and incorporate this into your fight. Don't just be the talk. Walk the walk. Do the actions. Actions speak louder than words. Much love, much light, much blessings. Thank you so much for watching this video. Until the next video, guys, and happy Juneteenth.